that looks unnatural to a certain point. And I wonder, is it really top secret technology being displayed for us right now? It very well may be.
Blake, I'm looking at Jeffrey's email right now, and he describes he couldn't hear the thunder.
It's okay.
Want to go inside.
It's okay. Huh?
Want to go inside.
Okay, you go ahead.
That's enough weather for me. Want to go by myself.
It's kind of fun, isn't it?
No.
Well, it's the 4th of July.
No, it's not.
Oh, see. It's okay. You're fine.
He hid right behind our house.
Yeah, well, it's not gonna hit there again. Okay? Because lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place. Shit!
No one stayed. And NASA ended up with exactly what it wanted. 125,000 acres of nothing.
Possibly conceive, and as it turns out, the cleanest.
Now, the most amazing thing is that that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God! It's making its own weather!
This is the shuttle's fuel tank. It may only be 130 miles to space, but to cover that distance, the engines will use 500,000 gallons of fuel, and that works out at 2 feet to the gallon. Despite the cost, however, NASA does need to test these engines once in a while. So they built this place in the wetlands of Mississippi. The first thing they installed was a huge loudspeaker, through which they played white noise to simulate the sound of a rocket.
They then sent a number of trucks in different directions out into the wilderness, and the drivers were ordered to stop when the noise levels became acceptable. This gave them an imaginary boundary line, and anyone living on the inside of it was offered a simple choice. Stay and you'll never hear another television program as long as you live, or take the NASA shilling and get out.
Despite the cost, however, NASA
no one stayed, and NASA ended up with exactly what it wanted. 125,000 acres of nothing.
The first thing they installed was... They even had to move 5 cemeteries, because the noise they were planning on making would wake the dead. Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And as it turns out, the cleanest.
Now, the most amazing thing is that that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get wet washing. It will actually rain. I told you! It's raining! That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather. No one stayed, and NASA ended up with exactly...
This is the shuttle's fuel tank. It may only be 130 miles to space, but to cover that distance, the engines will use 500,000 gallons of fuel, and that works out at 2 feet to the gallon. Despite cost, however, NASA does need to test these engines once in a while. So they built this place in the wetlands of Mississippi. They even had to... The first thing they installed was a huge loudspeaker, through which they played white noise to simulate the sound of a rocket.
They then sent a number of trucks in different directions out into the wilderness, and the drivers were ordered to stop when the noise levels became acceptable. This gave them an imaginary boundary line, and anyone living on the inside of it was offered a simple choice. Stay, and you'll never hear another television program as long as you live. Or take the NASA shilling and get out. No one stayed, and NASA ended up with exactly what it wanted. 125,000 acres for nothing.
The first thing they installed was a huge loudspeaker, through which they even had to move 5 cemeteries, because the noise they were planning on making would wake the dead. Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. I couldn't even hear myself. This is the loudest sound you could possibly conceive. And as it turns out, the cleanest.
Now, the most amazing thing is that that cloud up there, which was generated by the engine, is just a mixture of hydrogen and oxygen. It's water vapor. And in about an hour's time, someone in Mississippi is going to get washing. It will actually rain.
They even had to move 5 cemeteries.
I told you!
Because the noise they were planning on making would wake the dead.
That's unbelievable! Oh. NASA's playing God. It's making its own weather.
Don't worry if you can't hear what I'm saying. This is the shuttle's fuel tank. It may only be 130 miles to space, but to cover that distance, the engines will use 500,000 gallons of fuel. And that works out at 2 feet to the gallon. Despite the cost, however, NASA does need to test these engines once in a while. So they built this place in the wetlands of Mississippi.
Someone in Mississippi is going to get washing. It will actually rain.
The first thing they installed was a huge loudspeaker, through which they played white noise to simulate the sound of a rocket.
Then sent a number of trucks in different directions out into the wilderness, and the drivers were ordered to stop when the noise levels became acceptable. This gave them an imaginary boundary line, and anyone living on the inside of it was offered a simple choice. Stay, and you'll never hear another television program as long as you live. Or take the NASA shilling and get out.
Despite the cost, however, NASA does need to test these engines once in a while. So they built this place in the wetlands of Mississippi.
Someone in Mississippi is going to get washing. It will actually rain.
The first thing they
would vibrate any strings that were present in the ground. We might get a sound back like,
through which they
and
played
we'd say,
white noise to simulate
that's natural
the
gas.
sound of a rocket.
We might get a sound back like, and we'd say that's crude oil. We were able to identify each frequency. We accomplished this with just 30 watts of radio power. If you do this with a billion watts, the vibrations are so violent that the entire piano would shake. In fact, the whole house would shake. In fact, the vibrations could be so severe underground that they could even cause an earthquake.
While we feel that HARP is a unique facility, it's not the only one like in the world. HARP has some capabilities that we feel are better than some of the others. You can change the frequencies. You can shift the beam so that you can move it from one part of the ionosphere to another, and it has quite a bit more power than some of the other facilities throughout the world that are doing the same kinds of research.
I chose what's called a phased array antenna for the patents because it can be aimed. Picture holding your microwave oven in your hands with the door open. Then you can move it around and send those microwaves different directions. And for these applications where I wanted precise control of where the power was, I felt that was the best type of antenna to use. And that is the kind that HARP has built.
What we can do with an antenna is change the portion of the sky into which we insert the energy.
HARP can create some of the effects that the sun creates that are similar to the aurora borealis.
HARP can paint designs in the sky, if you will. You know, it can take the beam and move it in any pattern that the scientist who's doing an experiment might want to do.
What I'm holding in my hands is an electrodeless lamp. In it, I have a low atmosphere gas, somewhat similar to the atmosphere above the Earth. I'm now going to put this in the microwave oven, which will irradiate it with about 1 watt per square centimeter.
You know, you put 1 watt out and you've got the field necessary to break down the air, or whatever happens.
Then you see all of the motion of the plasma. That's typical of what will happen at high altitude where the ionosphere gets irradiated with these big beams.
That was 1 watt per centimeter. HARP focuses 3.6 million watts and squeezes it into a billion-watt or gigawatt beam.
We're squeezing the megawatts into a narrow beam. Then in a very tiny area, you can create what's it called, an effective gigawatt.
Is HARP safe? Yes, HARP is safe.
The Earth is a web of interconnections. How do we know what we're doing when we blast the upper atmosphere with a huge amount of energy?
It takes a tiny, tiny amount of energy to release a huge amount of energy. It's the same as a bullet, for example. If you have the primer on the back of a bullet, and that primer releases a tiny amount of energy, but it triggers the larger power in the bullet itself. And HARP is playing with the energy system of the Earth.
In the HARP program, we have, I believe right now, 18 different colleges and universities that are working the program with us. University scientists are interested because they're studying science, and this is a major effect on the Earth, and so they want to know more about what it is and what it does.
HARP has no effect on the Earth.
HARP began in the 1980s, and we were just beginning to learn about chaos theory, how a tiny stimulus can change the dynamics of a living system like the human body or the whole living Earth. I don't think the people who developed HARP were even aware of that science or its impact in the life sciences. Today, our knowledge is much bigger about how tiny effects can drastically shift the health or well-being of a living thing.
It is possible with a big beam to take a part of that upper atmosphere and push it out further.
What they're not paying any attention to is what's happening to the ionosphere while it's being held 80 miles out into space by this high-energy beam. It's heating up. And all of the molecules in that ionosphere region are absorbing energy out of that radio beam. And if they pick the right frequency to push that plume out into space, that energy may discharge back out of the ionosphere, back down the radio beam, and strike the Earth. And it would be about 100 times the energy released out of a thunderbolt. That's how much energy would be released.
In certain applications, the military acknowledges that it can literally lift the ionosphere, and what they say is it's not a problem, it's a short period of time, yet when you lift the ionosphere up, the lower atmosphere rushes in and fills that void, which changes localized.
The Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete story of his own, that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator.
Many attribute the Is it possible that mankind's role in the weather is more than incidental? Is a top-secret government project actually controlling the weather? We've done it before. Unsealed case file. Operation Popeye. March 1967. The Ho Chi Minh Trail. Ground zero in the battle to control the weather. Seeking an edge in the intensifying Vietnam War, the U.S. military launches a bold initiative.
Operation Popeye was a weather manipulation program during the Vietnam War. What they wanted to do was seed clouds or create clouds to then cause a torrential downpour on troops on the battlefield.
Israel and deny Vietnamese access to their supply routes.
And they did. They extended a monsoon season by 30 days.
Officially, the aircraft and their crews were part of normal weather recon operations. But in reality, something far more sinister was going on.
He beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast which had the wound by which they live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And this second beast of Revelation chapter 13 is none other than the United States of America.
Photograph coming in my opinion, what we're looking at is a HARP weapon. In your face. In my opinion, this is what it is. I've been waiting to say that HARP and the weather can be weaponized, and I think this is a perfect photograph that has been submitted to Third Phase of Moon by Derek Burry. We want to get in touch with a Navy technician on board this vessel of what went down. Whether this attack a natural phenomenon, to me this seems like straight up, in your face, a test. We got Brent Cousins here. He's going to lay his opinion. We've seen a lot of weird skies and a lot of videos being submitted to us at Third Phase of Moon that have been pretty much waking up the people that what you're seeing is not natural. I believe what you're seeing in this photograph is a weapon. Brent? Blake, this is very interesting footage. I would have to say you sunk my battleship. What the hell's going on here? We have two battleships on the coastline. This could be a water spout out of control, and it has a direct hit on the battleship on the right. Or, like you're saying, Blake, CERN connection weapons. War games being held out in the sea. You know, things are heating up around the world. Putin just said he got stabbed in the back by Turkey. You know, I might have to back Putin up on this, but this isn't fair games, what's going around the world, it's all a cover-up. And this is a cover-up, what we're seeing right now. War games on the ocean conducted by our military. Harnessing HARP, CERN, what the hell's going on? I keep using what the hell because this video coming in is something that I've never seen before, Blake. You know, when I first saw it, you're exactly right. Skip a heartbeat comes to mind. Something big's going down, and this is a weapon, in my opinion. Coincidence? I don't think so. They must have some kind of magnetic drive, some kind of like CERN or HARP device aboard the ship. They're not even, it's already transit across any ocean. We're not stuck in Switzerland anymore. The technology's able to get anywhere around the world to harness or weaponize Mother Nature.
Oh my God, look at the horizontal vortices on the left side. Horizontal vortices. All right, I know.
Watch out. Yeah, Dick, beware, okay? Beware, you're good, beware.
It's not moving side to side, which means it's coming right at us right now.
We need to be...
This house right here. Hey, run up to that house. Get him to take shelter.
Reed, I have him. Back up.
Turn the car around. I'm going to call 911 again. Were you able to get through?
Yes, I talked to...
God, there's debris. It hit something.
You hear that roar?
Yeah. It's going to move south of us. Get ready to back up. You got to make perfectly sure nothing's going to expand the other.
I don't know. Sounds like a giant flame or something. I'm gonna walk across the street.
This is not good, y'all. No, I don't see anything yet. Did you see the lightning? Oh God, I don't feel good. Oh Lord, in the name of Jesus. Why is there nothing on TV? Jesus. What was that? I don't know where the safest part of this house is at. It's on the ground for sure. I feel it. Do you see anything? Yes, ma'am. Has there been any reports of any tornadoes out toward the airport? Because it's really, really loud out here. I Oh, thank you, Jesus.
You seen what's happening over there?
What's going on?
There's one going up and joining it.
Yeah?
It's going right fucking to the